The council chamber fell silent as Elder Do-hyun pointed his finger directly at me. "Minho killed our Alpha," he declared, his voice echoing off the stone walls. I felt my knees weaken, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Around me, faces I had known my entire life twisted with anger and disgust. No one would meet my eyes. No one except the cold, lifeless portrait of Yanho hanging on the wall. The man I had desperately tried to save, the leader I had admired, now gone forever. And somehow I had become the villain in a story I didn't even understand. I never thought my life would fall apart in a single day, but that's exactly what happened on the coldest morning of winter. My name is Minho, and I'm 26 years old. For the past 5 years, I served as the primary healer for the Moonstone Pack, a community of wolf shifters nestled deep in the mountains where humans rarely ventured. Being an Omega meant I faced certain expectations. People assumed I was weak, emotional, easily manipulated. But I had worked hard to prove myself different. I studied healing arts under our previous pack doctor until I could identify hundreds of herbs by scent alone and diagnose illnesses that stumped others. Everything changed 3 weeks before that terrible council meeting. Alpha Yunho, our pack leader, started showing signs of illness. At first, it seemed minor: fatigue, slight fever, nothing alarming. Yunho was 28, strong as an ox, and had never been seriously sick in his life. But when I examined him in his private quarters, something felt wrong. His pulse was irregular, his eyes seemed unfocused, and he mentioned strange dreams that left him exhausted. I prepared tonics and remedies, combinations I had used successfully dozens of times before. Yanho trusted me completely. "You've never let me down, Minho," he said one evening, his voice hoarse but warm. "Whatever this is, I know you'll figure it out." Those words haunted me later, because I didn't figure it out. Despite everything I tried, despite my sleepless nights researching old texts and consulting every resource I had, Yunho's condition worsened. Each day brought new symptoms. The fever spiked higher, his breathing became labored. Purple bruises appeared on his skin without explanation. I begged the council to bring in specialists from other packs, but Elder Do-hyun insisted we handle it internally. "We don't need outsiders seeing our Alpha in a weakened state," he said firmly. Looking back, I should have questioned that decision more forcefully, but I was young and inexperienced with pack politics. The night Yanho died, I was alone with him in the healing ward. His breathing had steadied slightly, and I allowed myself a moment of hope. Maybe he was finally turning a corner. I stepped away briefly to prepare fresh medicine, and when I returned 15 minutes later, he was gone. Just like that. The strongest Alpha our pack had seen in generations, reduced to a still form on a hospital bed. I screamed for help, tried everything I knew to revive him, but nothing worked. Pack members rushed in, saw me standing over Yunho's body with medicine bottles scattered around, and immediately their expressions changed. Suspicion replaced grief in their eyes. Elder Do-hyun arrived and took control of the situation with unsettling efficiency. He ordered everyone out except the council members, and they examined everything in the room. The funeral happened quickly, too quickly for proper grieving. Traditional pack funerals usually involved 3 days of ceremonies, but Yunho was buried within 24 hours. At the time, Elder Do-hyun explained it was to preserve his dignity, but I later understood it was to hide evidence. During the burial, pack members whispered around me. I caught fragments of conversations. Always thought that Omega was too ambitious, probably wanted power for himself, never trusted him. 2 days after the funeral, I received a summons to appear before the council. I arrived at the chamber with my medical records and notes, prepared to explain every treatment decision I had made. The room was arranged like a courtroom, with the 5 council elders seated at a high table and a single chair in the center where I was told to sit. Pack members filled the gallery, their faces hard and unforgiving.
Elder Doyen led the proceedings. He presented their case methodically. I had been the last person alone with Yunho. I had administered all his medicines. I had access to poisons in my healing supplies. And most damning, according to their hired expert, the combination of herbs I had given Yunho could be toxic in certain doses. The expert was someone I had never met, from a pack I had never heard of, but his confident testimony swayed the room. I tried to defend myself. I explained that the combination was standard, that I had used it successfully before, that something else must have caused Yunho's death. Then what was it? Elder Doyen demanded. If your treatments were correct, why did our Alpha die under your care? I couldn't answer that question. I didn't know. That uncertainty became my downfall. Other pack members came forward with testimonies that sounded rehearsed. A kitchen worker claimed she saw me acting strangely near Yunho's tea service. A guard said I seemed nervous when he asked about the Alpha's condition. A council member mentioned that I had once complained about how traditional Alphas were too controlling. Each statement was a small lie or a twisted truth, but together they built a narrative of guilt. I looked around desperately for anyone who might speak in my defense. There were pack members I had healed, people whose children I had saved from fever, friends I had laughed with at gatherings. But one by one, they avoided my gaze. Fear hung in the air. Fear that defending me might make them suspects too. The only person who seemed uncertain was Beta Ji-woo, Yunho's second in command, but even he remained silent when it mattered most. The council deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, Elder Do-hyun read the verdict. Minho, this council finds you responsible for the death of Alpha Yunho through negligence at best, malicious intent at worst. You are hereby banished from the Moonstone Pack, effective immediately. You have until sunrise tomorrow to leave our territory. If you are found here after that time, you will be executed. The word executed hit me like a physical blow. I wanted to scream, to fight, to demand justice, but what could I do? I was one Omega against an entire pack that had already decided my guilt. Beta Ji-woo escorted me back to my small cottage on the edge of pack lands. I'm sorry, he whispered as he left me at my door. I don't know what to believe, but I'm sorry. Those were the kindest words anyone spoke to me that day. I spent that final night packing what little I could carry, my books on healing, a few clothes, a photograph of my parents who had died when I was young, and the journal where I had documented every detail of Yunho's illness. I couldn't stop crying, not just because I was losing my home, but because I had failed. Whether or not the pack believed me, Yunho had died under my care, and I would carry that weight forever. As dawn broke, I took one last look at the only home I had ever known. The mountain peaks were painted orange and pink by the rising sun. Smoke purled from chimneys in the main village. Somewhere, children were probably waking up, excited for breakfast. Life would continue for the Moonstone Pack, as if I had never existed. With my backpack heavy on my shoulders, I walked through the main gate for the last time. No one came to say goodbye. I traveled for 3 days, mostly on foot, until I reached a mid-sized city called Riverport. It was far enough from pack territories that I could disappear among humans, and large enough that no one asked too many questions about strangers. I found a cheap apartment in a rundown building and used my savings to pay 3 months' rent in advance. The landlord, an elderly human woman, didn't care about my past as long as I paid on time. Finding work proved difficult. My healing skills meant nothing without proper human medical credentials, which I didn't have. Eventually, I got hired at Riverport General Hospital as a patient care assistant. Essentially, I helped nurses with basic tasks, changed bed sheets, brought food to patients. It was humbling work for someone who had been head healer of an entire pack, but I was grateful to have anything. The other hospital workers were kind enough, though I kept them at arm's length. A nurse named Hana tried to befriend me, inviting me to lunch and asking about my life. I gave vague answers. I'm from up north, family issues, needed a fresh start. She seemed to accept that. In a city full of people running from something, my story wasn't unusual.
Nights were the hardest. In the silence of my tiny apartment, guilt consumed me. I replayed every decision I had made during Yunho's illness. Should I have insisted on outside help sooner? Was there a symptom I missed? I filled notebook after notebook, trying to make sense of what had happened. The medical details didn't add up. Yunho's symptoms resembled poison more than disease, but I had never suggested that to the council. Why would anyone poison our Alpha? And who could have done it under the tight security of packed grounds? 6 months passed in this strange, lonely existence. I went to work, came home, ate simple meals alone, and fell asleep replaying my failures. Other hospital workers celebrated birthdays and holidays together, but I always declined invitations. Getting close to people felt dangerous. What if they discovered what I was? What if they learned about the accusations? It was easier to remain alone, a ghost moving through the world without leaving a mark. Then, one rainy October evening, everything changed again. I was walking home from a late shift, umbrella fighting against the wind, when I sensed someone watching me. Pack instincts, even suppressed ones, never fully disappear. I quickened my pace, but the presence followed. Finally, I spun around, ready to run or fight, and froze completely. Standing under a streetlight, rain dripping from his dark hair, was Yunho. Except it couldn't be Yunho. Yunho was dead. I had watched him die. I had attended his funeral. But this man had the same sharp jawline, the same intense eyes, the same broad shoulders. My umbrella fell from my hand as my knees gave out. I would have collapsed on the wet sidewalk if the stranger hadn't rushed forward to catch me. "Easy," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I'm not a ghost. My name is San. I'm Yunho's twin brother."
San helped me back to my apartment, practically carrying me up the 3 flights of stairs because I couldn't stop shaking. Twin brother? Yunho had never mentioned a twin. No one in the pack had ever spoken about another Alpha heir. How was this possible? San sat me down on my worn couch and made tea without asking where anything was, moving through my small kitchen like he belonged there. When he handed me a steaming cup, our fingers brushed, and I felt a jolt of electricity that reminded me unsettlingly of Yunho's presence. "I know you have questions," San began, settling into the chair across from me. "I have answers, but first I need you to answer something for me. Did you kill my brother?" His directness caught me off guard. Not, "I heard you killed him," or "they say you killed him," but a simple question seeking truth. I met his eyes, those same dark eyes Yunho had, and answered with all the honesty I had left. "No, I tried everything I knew to save him. I failed, but I didn't kill him. I would never have hurt Yunho." San studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you. Now, let me tell you a story you won't find in any pack records." He explained that San and Yunho were indeed twin brothers, born on the same night, 28 years ago. Their parents, the previous Alpha and Luna, had been overjoyed until the pack's eldest elder consulted ancient prophecies. According to old beliefs, twin alphas born to the same pack brought catastrophic misfortune. One would always destroy the other, and both would bring the pack to ruin. Faced with this supposed curse, their parents made an agonizing decision. They would keep Yunho, the firstborn, and send San away before anyone beyond the immediate family and highest council knew twins existed. San was given to distant relatives in South Korea who had emigrated there generations ago and had no connection to pack politics. He grew up human, or at least believing he was human, until his first shift at 18 revealed the truth. The family who raised me explained everything then, San continued, his voice tight with old pain. They told me about my birth pack, my twin brother, the prophecy. They made me promise never to seek out Yunho, said it would endanger both of us. I tried to honor that promise for 10 years, but 6 months ago I started having dreams, vivid nightmares where Yunho was calling for help, drowning in darkness. I couldn't ignore them anymore. San had traveled to the Moonstone Pack territory, arriving 2 weeks after Yunho's death. The pack was still in mourning, and the reception he received was cold and suspicious. Beta Jiwoo confirmed his identity through scent and resemblance, but the council, led by Elder Do-hyun, seemed more annoyed than welcoming. They treated me like an inconvenient complication, San said bitterly. I asked how Yunho died, and they fed me the same story they told everyone else, that you gave him improper treatment and caused his death. But San's instincts, honed by years working as a private investigator in Seoul, told him something was wrong. The council was too eager to close the matter, too insistent that I accept their version without questions. When he pushed for details, Elder Do-hyun became hostile. Your brother is dead. The killer has been punished. There's nothing more to discuss. That response only made San more suspicious. I started investigating on my own, San explained. I have skills they didn't expect. I broke into the council archives and photographed everything related to Yunho's death, medical reports, witness statements, the autopsy notes. I also discovered something interesting. Substantial amounts of money have been disappearing from PAC funds over the past 3 years.
Guess who controls those accounts? Elder Do-hyun? I whispered, pieces starting to fall into place. San nodded grimly. Exactly. I couldn't prove anything concrete yet, so I started tracking you down instead. If you really were a murderer, I'd bring you to justice myself. But if you were innocent, you might be the key to uncovering what actually happened. It took me 4 months to find you. You covered your tracks well. I pulled out my journals, the detailed records I'd kept of Yunho's illness and treatment. San examined them with the focus of someone trained to spot inconsistencies. As he read my notes describing symptoms, the irregular heartbeat, the unexplained bruising, the sudden organ failure, his expression grew darker. Minho, these symptoms match several known poisons, specifically ones that mimic natural illness. Did anyone else have access to Yunho's food or drink? I thought back carefully. The kitchen staff prepared his meals, but Elder Do-hyun personally delivered Yunho's evening tea. He said it was a special blend for energy and focus, something he'd been making for Yunho for months. San's eyes lit up. There it is. Slow poisoning over an extended period, small doses that wouldn't trigger immediate suspicion. By the time symptoms became severe, the poison was already throughout his system. Nothing you could have done would have saved him at that point. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I hadn't failed Yunho through incompetence. I had been set up, used as a scapegoat for a carefully planned murder. But why? I asked. Why would Elder Do-hyun kill Yunho? He was respected, powerful in his own right. What did he gain? San pulled out a folder of documents he'd stolen from PAC archives. Everything. Look at the PAC hierarchy. With Yunho dead and no clear heir, the council takes temporary control. And who leads the council? Elder Do-hyun. He's been positioning his own son for the Alpha role, but Yunho was too strong, too popular. As long as Yunho lived, Do-hyun's family would never rise to leadership. We talked through the night, comparing notes, building a timeline. The poisoning had likely started months before Yunho showed symptoms, small amounts that accumulated in his body. When the illness became visible, Do-hyun had blocked my attempts to bring in outside help, knowing a specialist might identify the poison. He'd rushed the funeral to prevent a thorough autopsy, and he'd manipulated the council and PAC into blaming me, the convenient Omega with no family or powerful allies to defend me.
We need proof, I said finally. Everything we have is circumstantial. We need something solid that even the council can't ignore. San agreed. The poison had to come from somewhere. Dohyun isn't a healer or chemist. He must have obtained it from outside sources. I have contacts in the investigation world who can help trace unusual poison purchases or acquisitions. But I need you to come back with me to the pack. Fear shot through me. San, they'll kill me if I set foot on pack lands. The banishment order includes an execution clause. He reached across and took my hand, his grip warm and steady. I won't let anyone hurt you. As Yunho's twin and rightful heir, I have authority even Elder Dohyun can't completely dismiss. We'll demand a formal reinvestigation. With the evidence we've gathered, we can force them to listen.
I wanted to believe him, but 6 months of exile had taught me how powerless I truly was. Still, the thought of Yunho's real killer walking free while I carried the blame burned inside me. I owed it to Yunho's memory to fight, even if it meant risking everything. Okay, I agreed quietly. I'll go back, but we need an airtight case. One mistake and they'll bury both of us. Over the next 2 weeks, San worked his investigation magic. He contacted former colleagues, called in favors, and traced financial records with impressive skill. What he uncovered was damning. Elder Dohyun had purchased a rare plant called Night Bloom 3 months before Yunho's symptoms appeared. Night Bloom was banned in most places because of its use in untraceable poisonings. A single merchant in a distant city confirmed the sale, remembered Dohyun because he'd been so insistent on secrecy. We also found an ally I never expected, Beta Ji-woo. San had stayed in contact with him, and Ji-woo had been conducting his own quiet investigation. He'd never believed I was truly guilty, but fear of the council had kept him silent. Now, with San's backing and evidence mounting, Ji-woo was ready to stand with us. He provided insider information about council meetings where Dohyun had steered conversations to blame me, blocking anyone who suggested alternative explanations. The 3 of us met secretly at a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Pac territory. Ji-woo looked older than I remembered, weighed down by guilt. I should have defended you at the trial, he said, unable to meet my eyes. I was Yunho's beta, his friend. I failed both of you. I understood his position better now. Speaking against the council without proof would have accomplished nothing, except making him a target too. Still, the betrayal stung. San laid out our evidence. Financial records, poison purchase receipts, medical analysis showing Yunho's symptoms matched Night Bloom poisoning, and testimony from pack members who'd seen Dohyun delivering the special tea. We also had my detailed medical journals, proving I'd followed correct treatment protocols. Together, it painted a clear picture of premeditated murder and conspiracy. We present this to the full pack, not just the council. Dohyun's power comes from operating in shadows and controlling information. We bring everything into the light, force a public accounting. Under pack law, any member can call for a truth hearing if they have evidence of council corruption. As Yunho's heir, my call can't be refused. Ji-woo warned us it wouldn't be easy. Dohyun have spent months consolidating power, placing allies in key positions. Some pack members genuinely believed I was guilty and would resist the truth. We might face violence or another rigged proceeding. But we had something Dohyun didn't expect. Actual evidence and the rightful alpha heir demanding justice. It would have to be enough. The night before we planned to return to pack territory, I couldn't sleep. San noticed me sitting by the window at 2 a.m. and joined me. Having second thoughts? He asked gently. I shook my head. Just thinking about Yunho. He deserved so much better than this. He was a good leader, a good man, and Dohyun took that away out of pure greed. San was quiet for a moment. Tell me about him. I never got to know my own brother.
So I shared memories. Yunho's terrible jokes that somehow always made people laugh. His habit of personally checking on sick pack members. The way he'd sneak extra desserts to the Omega children during festivals. He treated me like an equal, I said softly. Never made me feel less because I was an Omega.
He valued my skills and judgment. That's rare among traditional alphas. San listened intently, a sad smile on his face. He sounds like he was everything I hoped a brother would be. I'm glad he had you in his life, Minho. Even at the end, knowing someone cared that much must have mattered. Something shifted between us in that moment, an understanding deeper than our shared goal of justice. We'd both lost Yunho, both been denied the relationship we should have had with him. That shared grief created a bond I hadn't expected. As dawn approached, San made a promise. Whatever happens when we go back, I won't let them hurt you again. You have my word as an alpha, and as someone who's come to care about you beyond just this investigation. His words warmed something inside me that had been frozen since my banishment. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. Maybe hope, maybe just determination, but it was enough.
We arrived at Moonstone Pack territory on a cloudy afternoon that threatened rain. The main gate guards recognized me immediately, and their hands went to their weapons. San stepped forward, his alpha presence suddenly commanding. I am San, twin brother of Yunho, and rightful heir to Pack leadership. I'm invoking my right to call a truth hearing under traditional Pack law. Anyone who interferes answers to me personally. The guards looked uncertain, caught between their orders to keep me out and the undeniable authority in San's voice. Finally, the senior guard spoke into a radio, and minutes later, Beta Jiwoo arrived to escort us. News of our arrival spread rapidly. By the time we reached the central meeting ground, hundreds of Pack members had gathered. Their expressions ranged from shock to anger to confusion. I walked with my head high, refusing to show the fear churning in my stomach. Elder Do-yoon stood with the other council members, his face carefully neutral, but I caught the flash of panic in his eyes when he saw the folder of documents San carried. "This is highly irregular," Do-yoon announced loudly. "The Banished One was forbidden from returning under penalty of death. Why is he here, Beta Jiwoo? Why have you violated our laws?" San answered before Jiwoo could respond. "I have evidence that the proceeding that banished Minho was based on lies and manipulation. I'm calling for a truth hearing, which is my right as Yunho's heir. Pack law states that such a call cannot be refused when credible evidence of corruption exists. I have that evidence. Will the council honor our laws, or will you reveal your guilt by refusing?" Do-yoon was trapped. Refusing would confirm suspicions and potentially turn the Pack against the council. He forced a cold smile. "Of course we honor our laws. Present your so-called evidence, though I warn you, wasting the Pack's time with baseless accusations carries serious consequences." San nodded calmly. "I welcome those consequences if I'm wrong. Do you?" The hearing was held in the open air so every Pack member could witness it. San presented each piece of evidence methodically: the financial records showing embezzlement, the merchant's testimony about selling nightbloom poison to Do-yoon, the medical expert analysis proving Yunho died from poisoning, not medical negligence, and my detailed journals showing I'd followed proper treatment protocols. With each revelation, murmurs grew louder among the Pack. Faces that had been hostile toward me now turned shocked and angry toward the council. Do-yoon tried to discredit the evidence, claiming the documents were forged, the merchant was lying for money, the medical analysis was bought testimony. But San had anticipated every objection and had supporting proof for everything. The turning point came when Jiwoo stepped forward to testify. As Yunho's beta and second in command, his word carried immense weight. "I was present at the original council deliberations," Jiwoo said, his voice steady despite obvious nerves. Elder Do-yoon pressured council members to vote for banishment. He said if we didn't act decisively, the Pack would lose confidence in our leadership.
He provided the so-called expert witness and coached others on their testimony. I said nothing because I was a coward. I'm not being a coward anymore. Minho is innocent. Elder Do-yoon murdered our Alpha.
The crowd erupted. Pack members shouted questions and accusations. Some moved threateningly toward Do-yoon, who had gone pale. His fellow council members edged away from him, their expressions suggesting they were reconsidering their past support. San raised his hand for silence, and surprisingly, the crowd obeyed. He had Yunho's natural authority, that indefinable quality that made people want to follow. Elder Do-yoon, San said formally, you stand accused of murdering Alpha Yunho through poison, embezzling Pack funds, and orchestrating a conspiracy to blame an innocent Pack member. How do you answer these charges? For a long moment, Do-yoon said nothing. Then his carefully maintained composure cracked. You understand nothing, he shouted. I served this pack for 40 years. I deserved to lead, not some young alpha who made decisions based on feelings rather than tradition. Yunho was weak, too progressive, too willing to change our ways. I did what was necessary. The confession sent shockwaves through the gathering. Even pack members who'd supported traditional values looked horrified. Murdering an alpha, their alpha, was unforgivable regardless of political disagreements. Do-yoon seemed to realize his mistake and tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. San looked at the other council members. You've heard his confession. What is the council's decision? The remaining elders conferred briefly. Then the eldest, a woman named Elder Somi, spoke. Elder Do-yoon is removed from the council and from the pack. He will be tried according to our laws for murder and treason. Minho's banishment is hereby revoked. The council formally apologizes for our failure to seek truth and justice. We were manipulated, but that doesn't excuse our blindness. Do-yoon was taken into custody by pack guards. As they led him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. You should have stayed gone. You're nothing, just an Omega who got lucky. I met his gaze steadily. I'm the Omega who survived your plot and brought the truth to light. That's more than nothing. After the formal proceedings ended, individual pack members approached me. Some apologized for believing lies about me. Others thanked me for persevering when everything seemed hopeless. A few Omega pack members hugged me, tears streaming down their faces. You showed us we don't have to accept injustice, one young Omega said. Thank you for being strong. Not everyone was happy about my vindication. Some pack members had genuinely believed in my guilt, and admitting they were wrong was difficult. A few elders who'd supported Do-yoon's traditional views resented the changes my return represented. But the majority seemed relieved that truth had prevailed, even if the truth was painful. That evening, San called a pack meeting to address the future. As Yunho's twin and rightful heir, he was offered the alpha position. The pack needed strong leadership, especially after such upheaval. San accepted on one condition: I won't lead alone. Yunho believed in shared leadership and progressive values. I'm appointing Ji-woo as my beta, and I'm creating a new council position, pack healer advisor. Minho, if you're willing, I want you in that role. The offer surprised me. I'd expected to return to my old position, quietly healing in the background, but San was giving me a voice in pack leadership, formal recognition that Omegas deserved seats at decision-making tables. I accept, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Around me, younger pack members cheered. The older, traditional members looked less enthusiastic, but didn't object openly. Over the weeks that followed, we worked to rebuild trust and implement changes. San established new oversight systems for pack finances, ensuring no single person could embezzle funds again. We created formal investigation procedures so accusations couldn't be railroaded through without proper evidence. And we began dismantling the strict hierarchy that had made someone like me such an easy scapegoat. Through all of this, my relationship with San deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. We spent long hours working together, planning reforms, mediating disputes.
I saw his patience with pack members resistant to change, his genuine desire to honor Yunho's legacy while building something sustainable. And I noticed smaller things too, how he always made sure I'd eaten during long meetings, the way his face lit up when I entered a room, how our hands would brush and linger just a moment too long to be accidental. One evening, about 2 months after my return, San and I were reviewing proposals in his office, the same office where Yunho had worked. Rain drummed against the windows, and a fire crackled in the hearth. San set down the document he'd been reading and looked at me with unusual seriousness. "Minho, I need to tell you something. When I first came looking for you, it was purely about justice for Yunho. But somewhere along the way, my reasons changed." My heart started beating faster. San continued, "You're brilliant, brave, and kind, despite everything you've endured. Working beside you these past months has been the best part of becoming Alpha. I've developed feelings for you that go beyond friendship or shared purpose. I understand if you don't feel the same, if my resemblance to Yunho makes this complicated, but I needed you to know." I'd been trying to ignore my own growing feelings, convinced they were inappropriate or just gratitude for San's help. But hearing him voice what I'd been afraid to acknowledge broke something open inside me. "It is complicated," I admitted. "I cared about Yunho as a leader and friend, and yes, you look like him, which was confusing at first, but you're not him. You're your own person, someone who saw me when I was invisible, who fought for truth when it would have been easier to accept lies. I have feelings for you too, San, real feelings, for you specifically." San crossed the room and took my hands in his. "I don't want to rush you or pressure you. We can take this as slowly as you need, but I want you to know that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." I looked up at him, this Alpha who'd turned my world upside down and then helped me rebuild it stronger. "I don't want slow," I whispered. "I've been alone and afraid for too long. Being with you feels right." When San kissed me, it was gentle and patient, asking rather than demanding. I kissed him back, letting months of loneliness and pain melt away. We stood there in the firelight, holding each other, and for the first time since Yunho's death, I felt completely at peace. This wasn't about replacing Yunho or using San as a substitute. This was something new, something ours, built on shared struggle and genuine connection. Our relationship became public knowledge gradually. Some pack members were thrilled, seeing it as a symbol of new beginnings. Others were scandalized. An Alpha with an Omega advisor was already progressive, but actually partnering with one broke long-standing traditions.
San addressed the concerns directly at a pack meeting. "Times are changing. The old ways that value people based on hierarchy and designation rather than character and capability no longer serve us. Minho is my partner in leadership and in life. If anyone has a problem with that, they're welcome to challenge me directly." No one took him up on that challenge. San had proven himself as a leader, and more importantly, the pack was thriving under the new system. Disputes were settled fairly, resources were distributed equitably, and voices that had been silenced for generations were finally heard. Results spoke louder than tradition. 6 months after my return, the pack held a bonding ceremony recognizing San and me as official partners. It was different from traditional Alpha bondings, more egalitarian, focused on partnership rather than possession. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to support each other's growth, to lead with wisdom and compassion, and to honor the trust the pack had placed in us. As I stood before the pack with San beside me, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. I'd been blamed for a death I didn't cause, banished from my home, stripped of everything I valued. I'd lived in exile, carrying guilt and shame that weren't mine to bear.
But through that darkness, I'd found strength I didn't know I had. I'd learned that justice sometimes requires patience and faith, and I'd discovered that endings can become beginnings if we're brave enough to fight for them. Yunho's death would always carry sadness, but his legacy lived on in the reforms we implemented and the pack we were building. In a strange way, both his brothers, the one he'd grown up with and the one he'd never known, were honoring him by creating the progressive, just community he'd envisioned. That night, after the ceremony, San and I stood on the balcony of our shared quarters, looking out over Pac lands. "Do you think Yunho would approve?" I asked quietly. San wrapped his arm around my waist. "I think he'd be happy you're safe and thriving, and I think he'd be glad his death wasn't in vain, that it exposed corruption and led to real change. Beyond that," he kissed my temple, "I think he'd tell us to stop worrying about his opinion and just be happy." I laughed, leaning into San's warmth. Below us, pack members celebrated with music and dancing. Children ran through the square, playing games that crossed designation lines. Alpha pups and Omega pups together, without the rigid separation of previous generations. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges certainly, but also possibility. I'd come home not as a condemned criminal, but as someone who'd fought for truth and won. I'd found love with an alpha who saw me as an equal, built a life where my voice mattered, and helped create change that would outlast us both. The pack that had banished me learned that justice requires humility, that tradition without wisdom is just stubbornness, and that sometimes the people we dismiss as powerless hold the keys to our salvation. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, I made a silent promise to Yunho's memory. I would use this second chance wisely, lead with compassion, and never forget what it felt like to be powerless and afraid. Those memories would make me a better healer, a better advisor, and a better partner to San. Pain had shaped me, but it wouldn't define me. I was Minho, survivor, healer, and Omega who refused to stay silent. That was more than enough.